On June 13th, 2026, at precisely 5:09 in the morning, the ground inside Yellowstone National Park exploded. It tore a 61-foot fissure through the earth, a jagged wound venting steam and water heated to 194 degrees Fahrenheit, just shy of boiling. The blast was forceful enough to turn the Firehole River a milky gray for more than 3 miles downstream. And then, less than 48 hours later, it happened again. A second collapse. A patch of solid ground that geologists had just walked on simply dissolved, opening a brand new 21-foot wide pool of violently boiling water that began spouting 30 feet into the air. This was not an earthquake. This was not a tremor. This was a hydrothermal explosion, a sudden, violent release of pressurized steam from the Earth's shallow plumbing. The Yellowstone Volcano Observatory insists the supervolcano alert level remains normal. They insist this has nothing to do with magma. But here is what they cannot explain away. This is the second major explosion in this exact area in less than 2 years. The ground is changing faster than they can model it, and the geological forces that created these new cracks are still active, still building, and still hidden just beneath the surface. So what is actually happening under the rock and soil of Biscuit Basin? Have we been so focused on the volcano deep below that we missed the more immediate danger brewing right under our feet? What does a system that is not waking up, but is very clearly shifting, truly look like? Let us be clear. The images are real. The new cracks are real. The danger is absolutely real. What that danger actually is changes everything. Drop a comment below with your first thought on seeing these fractures. Is it the supervolcano or something else? A significant number of people who watch our work, who value this kind of in-depth analysis, are not subscribed to the channel. The truth is, that single click is the most vital signal you can send that this content matters. It's an emergency for creators trying to break through the noise. Take 1 second. It's that important. Let's begin. The story starts in darkness. 5:09 a.m., Mountain Daylight Time. The sun is not yet over the horizon in northwestern Wyoming. The tourists are not yet on the boardwalks. In the quiet of the pre-dawn, a suite of scientific instruments felt a sudden, anomalous spike of energy. Seismic sensors operated by the University of Utah seismograph stations, the official monitors for the park, registered a distinct, sharp jolt. Not the rolling signature of an earthquake, but something more abrupt, more explosive. At the same time, specialized infrasound microphones, designed to hear frequencies far too low for the human ear, recorded a massive pressure wave. A silent boom of immense power that radiated out from a single point in Biscuit Basin. And one static webcam, installed just 1 year prior, captured the visual proof. A dark plume of steam and debris rocketing upward from a barren, flat area just north of a feature named Black Diamond Pool. For the scientists at the Yellowstone Volcano Observatory, or YVO, this was not a surprise. It was a confirmation. They had been watching this specific patch of ground for 2 years. They knew something like this was coming. They just didn't know when. When park geologist Jefferson Hungerford and physical science technician Kiernan Foltz Donahue arrived on site the next day, June 14th, the evidence of the blast was unmistakable. The initial explosion had not created a crater. Instead, it ripped the ground open. A complex set of 3 new vent groups had formed. The largest was the 61-foot-long fissure. It was 5 feet across at its widest point, a raw gash in the earth filled with steaming, churning water. Foltz Donahue's field thermometer registered the temperature at 194 degrees Fahrenheit, nearly boiling at Yellowstone's high elevation. The geologists documented the changes meticulously. They photographed the new fractures, took measurements, and walked the perimeter of the blast zone, a barren, sintered area of mineral deposits. They crossed a particular section of ground near the middle vent group, noting its stability underfoot. It was solid, unremarkable, safe. Then they left. 48 hours passed, and the ground they had just walked across collapsed. Between June 14th and June 16th, that exact patch of earth gave way, plunging downward to form a brand new, circular hot spring, a pool measuring 21 by 17 feet, filled with violently boiling water. The system was not done shifting. It was just getting started. By June 18th, the YVO webcam, still watching, captured the new pool in a full eruption. With no warning, it began acting as a geyser, intermittently blasting jets of boiling water 20 to 30 feet into the air. In the span of 5 days, a quiet, barren patch of silica had transformed into a dynamic, hazardous, and completely new geothermal area. The geologists were lucky. A 2-day difference in their fieldwork schedule was the only thing that separated a routine survey from a catastrophic accident. It is a stark reminder of a fundamental Yellowstone truth. The ground here is not permanent. It is a thin, fragile crust separating the world we know from an underworld of immense heat and pressure. And sometimes, that crust fails. To understand what happened in Biscuit Basin, you have to understand the plumbing. Yellowstone is not just a volcano. It is one of the largest and most complex hydrothermal systems on the planet. Think of it less as a mountain of lava and more as a gigantic, subterranean pressure cooker. Miles beneath the surface, a massive chamber of magma, the heat engine of the entire system, superheats the surrounding rock. Above this, a vast network of fractures and conduits carries groundwater down toward that heat. The water becomes superheated, far beyond its normal boiling point, but it remains liquid because of the immense pressure from the rock above it. This superheated water is rich in dissolved minerals, especially silica, which it leaches from the volcanic rock it flows through. As this water rises toward the surface, the pressure drops. The silica precipitates out, lining the inside of the underground channels like scale inside a pipe. Over time, these mineral deposits can seal off a conduit completely. The plumbing gets clogged. But the heat engine below never stops working. The water trapped behind that seal continues to heat up. The pressure builds and builds until the strength of the overlying rock is no longer enough to contain it. The seal fails. The superheated water flashes instantly into steam, expanding to more than 1,500 times its original volume in a fraction of a second. That expansion is what a hydrothermal explosion is, a catastrophic failure of the Earth's plumbing. It is a steam-driven event, not a magma-driven one. There is no lava, no ash in the volcanic sense. It is a blast of pressurized groundwater, rock, and mud. Michael Poland, the scientist in charge of the YVO, is the lead authority on this danger. His assessment is clinical and direct. These are shallow events. They are not signs of the supervolcano waking up. The official volcano alert level for Yellowstone remains at normal. The aviation color code remains at green. There is no evidence of magma moving, no harmonic tremor, no widespread ground deformation that would signal an impending eruption. This is a surface-level hazard. But calling it a surface-level hazard is like calling a flash flood some water. The description is technically accurate, but fails to capture the scale and violence of the event. A major hydrothermal explosion can hurl blocks of rock the size of a car for half a mile and create craters hundreds of feet across. They are among the most serious and unpredictable dangers in Yellowstone. Imagine standing on what you believe is solid ground. Could you imagine the feeling, knowing that 2 days later it dissolved into a pit of boiling water? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. We read every one. The June 2026 explosion was not an isolated incident. It was an echo. To understand its significance, we have to go back 2 years, to July 23, 2024. The location was the same, Biscuit Basin. The feature was Black Diamond Pool, a well-known hot spring, just south of where the new fissure would later appear. Without significant warning, Black Diamond Pool erupted in a massive hydrothermal explosion. It blasted steam, water, and rock hundreds of feet into the air. The force was so great it completely destroyed a section of the park's boardwalk, splintering the wooden walkway and hurling debris across the landscape. The National Park Service immediately closed the entire basin to the public. It has remained closed ever since. That 2024 event was a wake-up call for geologists. Biscuit Basin was clearly more active and unstable than previously thought. In response, during May and July of 2025, the YVO and their partners at the University of Utah installed a dedicated monitoring network focused squarely on the Black Diamond Pool area. This wasn't just a random upgrade, it was a targeted scientific stakeout. They deployed new seismometers to listen for the subtle fracturing of rock that can precede an explosion. They installed acoustic and infrasound sensors to capture the energy of a blast itself. They set up GPS units to track minute changes in ground elevation. And they mounted the static webcam that would eventually capture the June 2026 plume. It was an admission that something was happening here. They were fortifying their ability to watch because they knew another event was not just possible, but likely. The June 2026 explosion became one of the most perfectly documented hydrothermal blasts in history, not by luck, but by design. It proved the investment was necessary. It also proved the problem was bigger than just one pool. As Michael Pollan noted, the new explosion did not seem to significantly affect Black Diamond Pool itself. This suggests that these are not interconnected events, drawing from one large, unstable chamber. They are individual, isolated pockets of pressure, failing one by one. The problem isn't one clogged pipe. It's that the entire plumbing system in this basin is becoming unstable. If this explanation of Yellowstone's real danger, the one that is not clickbait, makes sense, please consider liking this video and sharing it with family and friends. Understanding the actual science is the first defense. This pattern of instability has deeper roots. You can trace the modern era of Yellowstone's volatility to one specific day, August 17, 1959. Just after 11:37 p.m., a massive 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck just west of the park boundary, centered near Hebgen Lake, Montana. It was one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded in the Mountain West. The ground shook so violently that it triggered a landslide of 80 million tons of rock, which screamed down a mountainside at 100 miles per hour, damming the Madison River and creating the brand new earthquake lake in a matter of minutes. 28 people died. Inside Yellowstone, the effects were just as profound. The quake fundamentally and permanently altered the park's underground hydrothermal plumbing. Geysers that had been dormant for decades roared back to life. Famous features, like Old Faithful, saw their eruption intervals shift dramatically. And in Biscuit Basin, the seismic waves destroyed the unique, biscuit-like mineral deposits that surrounded the hot springs and gave the area its name. They were shaken to pieces, washed away by the sloshing pools. The 1959 Hebgen Lake earthquake was a hard reset for Yellowstone's geology. It opened new pathways for water, sealed off old ones, and put new stresses on the entire system. The instability we see today in Biscuit Basin is, in many ways, a long-term aftershock of that single, violent night more than 60 years ago. The ground is still settling. The plumbing is still adjusting. The data streaming from the park confirms this constant state of flux. In May of 2026, the month before the explosion, Jamie Farrell, the chief seismologist of the YVO, and his team at the University of Utah seismograph stations recorded a total of 45 earthquakes in the Yellowstone region. This is perfectly normal background seismicity. The largest was a magnitude 2.0, a micro-earthquake so small it would be imperceptible to a person standing directly on the epicenter. None of this signaled a volcanic eruption. It was just the routine creaks and groans of a geologically active area. But then came the 5:09 a.m. blast. It wasn't an earthquake, but the energy it released was significant, and the ground immediately began to change. The creation of the 21-foot boiling pool from what was solid ground less than 48 hours earlier is what geologists call rapid evolution. The system is in a state of extreme flux, reconfiguring itself in response to the pressure release. This is what makes the area so hazardous. It is not just the threat of another explosion, it is the threat that the ground itself is no longer reliable. The collapse could have happened at any time. The fact that it happened after the geologists had just been there underscores the terrifyingly unpredictable nature of the threat. It's a game of geological roulette. I know this is the second time I am mentioning this, and honestly I would much rather just talk about boiling pits and infrasound. But the reality of this platform is that we live or die by the subscribe button. A huge number of viewers who love this content simply forget to click it. If you are one of them, please take this 1 second to fix it. It is critically important for us. Okay, back to the river. The river itself told a story of the explosion's power. For a blast to turn the Firehole River a milky gray for over 3 miles, a significant amount of material had to be ejected and washed into the waterway. That material, fine particles of rock, clay, and precipitated minerals like silica, came from the underground conduit that exploded. The river's discoloration was a visual fingerprint of the blast's contents. It proved that the explosion excavated and pulverized a substantial amount of subterranean material. Water samples taken downstream at Midway Geyser Basin, located 3.1 miles away, confirmed the presence of suspended sediment long after the main plume had dissipated. This wasn't just steam, it was an excavation, the earth clearing its own throat. The response from the National Park Service and the U.S. Geysers was immediate and decisive. Following the June 13th event, more monitoring equipment was deployed into Biscuit Basin. The area remains, and will remain, strictly closed to all public access for the foreseeable future. The official report published in the Caldera Chronicles, a weekly update from the YVO co-authored by Jefferson Hungerford, stated the obvious. The event emphasizes the dynamic and hazardous nature of hydrothermal activity in the region. It is a carefully worded, scientifically conservative statement that carries an immense weight of unspoken danger. To call this area dynamic is to say it is capable of changing violently and without warning. The question now is not if another event will happen in Yellowstone, but where and what kind. While the media loves to focus on the supervolcano, the true, day-to-day threat for anyone in the park comes from these localized, steam-driven events. They can occur in any of Yellowstone's more than 10,000 thermal features, from the Upper Geyser Basin near Old Faithful to the Mud Volcano area to Norris Geyser Basin, one of the hottest and most volatile spots on Earth. Each one is its own potential failure point. Biscuit Basin is now the epicenter of this modern instability. The combination of the 2024 Black Diamond Pool explosion and the 2026 fissure and pool formation points to a localized system that is highly stressed. The ground is readjusting to a new thermal and pressure regime. It's impossible to know if the June 2026 explosion was the final release of this built-up energy, or just another symptom of a larger, ongoing process. For now, the geologists will continue to watch. They will analyze the seismic data from Firehole team, monitor the ground deformation from the GPS units, and watch the live feed from the camera, hoping to understand the forces they are witnessing. The existence of this new boiling pool, a feature born in just a few days from solid ground, is a powerful symbol. It shows that the map of Yellowstone is not fixed. It is being redrawn, not over geological millennia, but over the course of a single week. The geologists who walked that patch of ground on June 14th did not know they were standing on the roof of a future hot spring. They were walking on a thin veneer of certainty, a veneer that was about to be peeled away. This is the fundamental tension of Yellowstone. It is a place of serene, breathtaking beauty that sits directly atop a system of unimaginable power and violence. We build boardwalks and scenic drives to experience it, to get close to its wonders. But those boardwalks are built on the assumption that the ground will stay put. In Biscuit Basin, that assumption has now been proven wrong, twice. The story of the new cracks at Yellowstone is not one of an impending apocalypse. It is something quieter, more complex, and in some ways, more unsettling. It is a story about the limits of our knowledge. We can place sensors, we can analyze data, we can watch with cameras, but we cannot stop the pressure from building in a sealed-off conduit a few hundred feet beneath the surface. We can predict that an area is unstable, but we cannot predict the exact moment the ground will fail. The scientists at the YVO are doing exactly what they should, monitoring the situation with the best technology available and communicating the facts without hyperbole. The alert level is normal because the volcano is not erupting, but the ground in Biscuit Basin is not normal. It is alive, it is evolving, and it is hazardous. The new fissure and the boiling pool are not warning signs of the supervolcano. They are the hazard itself. They are a reminder that in Yellowstone, the most immediate danger may not come from a deep magmatic roar, but from a sudden, violent hiss of steam from the very earth beneath your feet. The great irony is that the 2024 explosion, a destructive and dangerous event, is what made the detailed observation of the 2026 event possible. The fear from the first incident drove the science that captured the second. It's a cycle of crisis and response, with geologists constantly trying to keep up with a landscape that operates on its own timeline, governed by physics we understand but cannot control. What happens next in Biscuit Basin is anyone's guess. Will the new pool stabilize and become a permanent feature on the Yellowstone map? Will its geysering activity increase or die down? Or will another section of the basin's plumbing fail, creating yet another new feature, another new crack, another new danger? The cameras are still rolling, the seismometers are still listening, and the geologists are still watching, trying to read the intentions of a landscape that is constantly rewriting its own future. The question is not whether the supervolcano is shifting, it's whether we can ever